Hey, we're live. This Life in Tech episode 126. I'm Jason.
And I'm Dan.
And I'm TK.
And here we are again, my friends. Hey, happy Mother's Day. Very important thing to point out. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. I'm glad I have my mother.
Yeah, happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there, which is great. There's pretty good connection out there also with TK being across the world.
Hey, right. I'm at the worldwide headquarters of Century Cybersecurity and Cyber Academy. We opened up the new office this past Monday, and we had our first full week, so it's been awesome. I'd also like to echo the sentiment about Mother's Day, and I actually want to talk a little bit more about it than I probably normally would. I'm going to say thank you to three people. Two of them I know, and one of them I don't know, and one of them I'll never know. First off, I'd like to say thank you to Kristen for raising, in most cases, largely alone, our kids, and the incredible job that she's done and the incredible kids they've become. Obviously, I'd like to thank my mom because decidedly raising me was not the treat everybody thought it would be when I was an infant. And last but not least, both Dan and Jason know, but most people don't know I was adopted. And I was adopted at 8 weeks old in Roanoke, Virginia. And I want to thank my birth mother, because at some point in time, she figured out that she didn't have the resources or the capability to give me the life she thought I should have. And so she probably made the hardest decision that she ever made in her life and said, I'm going to put you up for adoption. So when people think about hard decisions and what you have to do, go out and thank all the moms, even the ones you haven't met.
Hell yeah, man. I've watched. It's hard for me to watch my mom raise me, because it's perfect hindsight. But I've certainly watched my wife raise our daughter and her son. Dude, man, is that not easy work. There's a ton of other things that I absolutely detest that I'd much rather do sometimes than well, you know what I mean? It's just a completely different mindset to mother something. You know what I mean? It's not the same thing as raising, I think. I don't know what you guys feel.
Well, I think it's having a boy and a girl. Every day is Mother's Day with a son, and every day is Father's Day with a girl. And it's not that there's not love on both ends of that equation, but it's different, right? And I think people need different things. And certainly when Jared was a little guy, I was gone all the time. So he's emotionally and I think a lot of ways a reflection of the amount of time he spent with mom. And certainly, my daughter she's mini me, right? And some days that's really good and other days not so much, right? Because just like being me, right? Some days it's really good and some days not so much. So it is interesting to see that dynamic of, time spent and effort exerted on being a parent.
It's intensive. I mean, there's no way around it. It's very intensive.
Yeah, no doubt.
Dan, you got any comments?
It's interesting because I take, and what I always notice with the moms versus dads, it seems like the moms are always telling them to be extra super cautious, worry about this, worry about this, worry about this, and the dads are more let's take some risks, but calculated and safe spot to fall to help push them for more. At least that's some of the things that I notice. I don't think there's any ever less worry. It's just, for me at least, I know that the world's not necessarily a safe place, and if you let the world happen to you versus going out and making it happen, it's a lot different. And so I've just noticed that with my kids that which is good. I mean, it's a balance. We all go through life looking for a similar result, but how we go about getting that result is quite different. And I've noticed that with my kids, I'm the one pushing, and then the moms are being the nurturing.
Well, it's interesting, man. I don't know how much you guys want to talk about this. I could talk about this forever because I find it massively interesting. Just if you look at the bifurcation between the sexes and the enormous amount of personal risk and vulnerability a woman incurs by becoming a mother. I mean, just physically, let alone mentally, right? And then you add on to it, at least in the modern world, certainly some professions, TK, like you had in the past, more than others, cause us to be away. And so they don't have that help. You know what I mean? And so to incur all that risk and all that biological vulnerability to nurture, right? Mother, not raise, but actually nurture another biological entity. Man, it's kind of crazy that it works this way. Sometimes I step back and I think about like the fact that it actually works as well as it does is kind of marvelous.
Right. I'll tell you a funny story. So, as you guys know, I'm a bit older than both of you, and Dan, be nice. See, Jason, this is why we can't have nice things when he's on here. Last week we had a great conversation, but that my parents were both Depression era kids, and they were both extremely safe and in certain cases risk takers, but in demonstrably different ways. They both agreed that you should go to school and get a degree so you could have a really good job title and work at one place, and live that what we used to call the American dream, right? I have my own thoughts on that. We're not going to get into that. That's a whole different animal right here, but I have my own thoughts on that, right? But I'll tell you a little story. So my mom would be the first one to drive me out to go to sports or things like that. My dad really didn't like sports. He was an engineer and thought it was a waste of time and effort, right? And my mom largely kept my father from killing me over the years when I did stupid crap. She'd be like, do not tell your father, right? Well, knowing that now, I understand I'd have been a dead man, right? But I was on a Saturday morning in the mid '80s. I was reading a little article in USA Today about how the Navy was going to expand the SEAL community. And so on Monday, I called in sick from a job I really didn't like, and I went down to the recruiter, and day and a half later, I'd signed it. I'm joining the Navy, and I'm going to go become a SEAL, right? Then all of a sudden, I started to contemplate my actions, having not, even as a 22-year-old, having not brought my parents into the whole decision, right? I didn't tell anybody what I was doing. It was probably the first only real adult thing I'd ever done to that point in my life. And my dad, you never called him at work. He was busy. He didn't even know his own phone number, right? But I had it, and I called him, and I'm like, Dad, and he's like, is mom and your sister dead, right? Because that's the only reason he could see anybody calling him, right? And I said, I joined the Navy. His first words, because he was scared of my mother too, was, have you told your mother, right? And so we both told my mother, right? And I had a family friend that I used to call Uncle, and he was a Vietnam era SEAL. And my mom grew up across the street from him in the suburbs of Pittsburgh. And so she had known the attrition rate and everything else. And, her words, for better or worse, changed my life. Because when I told her, with my father standing right next to me to protect me, so to speak, her words were, what happens when you fail? Not if you fail, when you fail. This was a simple math problem in her mind that over 80% of the people failed, and how are you going to surmount that? And in reality, what that 4'11" little German Czech lady did was give me the wherewithal to make it through the training, right? And in her own way, even though she was trying to protect her son and shield him from, danger, disappointment, failure, right? And I think today, most parents there's a balance, right? You want your kids to go out and experience failure and challenge themselves and do all those things, but you also don't want them to get hurt along the way. And sometimes those are mutually incompatible.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I it's funny, as much as we talk about technology and how technology can do this or that, I don't know that technology will ever, at least as we perceive it right now, satisfy that equation. There's just some things that have to be experienced, sans any other thing, right?
Right. I think, it's like life is a contact sport, as they say, and no more so than with your kids, right? And I mean, my kids and I spend a lot of time at youth sports, and now not so much because my youngest is in high school, but even in high school, you have parents that they want to coach their kids. They want to, and in large measure, it's two reasons. One, either they're living vicariously through their child, or two, they don't want to see their child get hurt or disappointed and everything, and so they try to mold that and manifest that, right?
Right.
I think, we all joke about the every kid gets a trophy thing, but in younger kids, they, participation has no longer become enough, right? And in certain cases, the parents want to see the kids get the trophy more than anybody else because they like the kid to light up. But there's more than a little bit of, psychological basis of study that says that's actually more damning in the long run than basically saying, hey, the best kid, the most improved kid. You come up with ways to incentivize greatness, right?
Yeah.
And that's, I think, we all learned that if you're not good, you sit on the bench. And now and I'll talk about girls basketball because it's really all I know anymore, is at a certain age group that stops, right? And we've had coaches tell the parents they have all the chairs where the girls are going to sit, and they put another chair like out 6 or 8 feet away and say, if you see your daughter sitting there, you're either coaching your kids from the stands or you're being a bad parent. Either way, we're not tolerating that.
Perfect.
And I don't think any of the parents are trying to be malicious or anything. They either, like I said, they're either living vicariously through their kids or they're trying to help their child. And sometimes having another adult, working for somebody, really, that's what a coach is. You're working for that coach. Working for somebody else is what you're going to do the rest of your life. And learning how to do it in a group setting is really good. And it's sometimes hard and disappointing for the child, but I'd rather my child be disappointed when they're 14 than when they're 24 or 28 because they don't have the skills to live properly.
Well, I haven't experienced this a lot with baseball with my stepson. Man, it's vicious. And, you're absolutely right. And I hadn't really thought about it from this perspective before. The parents really get involved, like inappropriately sometimes. I'm sure you've seen it too, right?
Oh, yeah.
And what just occurred to me is part of that is also nobody's ever like sat down and instructed them on how to be a fan of their own kids. You know what I mean? It's like let that kid have his or her own experience and don't trifle with it. I mean, that's why there is a coach for the team, and it's not you.
Right. It's hard though. I mean, I'm a lot better at it than I used to be. I don't yell at the refs. I don't, I largely try to mind my own business, but every now and then when, if you know what your child's talent level is, you get excited, not because anything around them is adverse, like another player knocks them down or something. Because for the most part, kids are going to fall down. They're going to get hit in anything. And it's kids playing sports. It's not anything malicious, but I think the hard part sometimes is living up to expectation. Like you've seen you want your child to live up to their expected level of greatness, whether it's academically or anything else, right? And it sometimes manifests itself in things that aren't so good, right? I mean, I've had parents in stands just yelling and screaming. Like in baseball was the worst, where a kid's paralyzed in T-ball. He's 5 years old, and he can't even swing the bat because his dad's yelling at him from the stands so much. And that's the bad end of that,
Well, Dan, you played sports at a high level. Yeah. Do you remember like parents when you were younger yelling from the stands and shit?
Oh yeah, of course. And this is also what's interesting to me, in that my boys weren't really all that interested in sports. And I don't know if that's because their mom and I had divorced, but when I was younger, not just from the parent side, but I umpired for the most part, almost all summer, starting at 16 and until probably 22 or 23. But at 16, it was really good money, making $20 a game. And I used to have to go and talk to, in many ways, it was the moms, funny enough, here on Mother's Day. And I had to say, look, you need to settle down a little bit. And I actually had to throw out several moms from the game because the coach couldn't get them under control. And I'm like, look, you got to go. I mean, it's disruptive. And I did see many times the kids really do become paralyzed because the parents were just out there just constantly instructing them, and they would freeze. They weren't having fun. And then word wound up getting around that if you're doing this too much, I'm going to ask you to leave, and there was never too many problems at that point forward while I was umpiring. Because I was as an umpire and having a love for baseball, if the kids weren't doing something, I'd be like, hey, you need to hold your bat like this, put your hands back, things of that nature. Or kids when they're 10 years old trying to throw a curveball, and me try to explain to them, no, don't do that, you really will hurt your arm, and there's a better way to throw a curveball without actually having to break the wrist. but it was always very interesting to see how, I mean, the parents are involved, but it becomes destructive. And I think a lot of kids stop playing sports because they just don't want to deal with the destruction that their parents are really doing to them during the game.
I think baseball in particular, because it's, the path to success is so long. I mean, you look at boys basketball now, the AAU is a filthy business to get kids into college basketball, because you're talking about a multi-billion-dollar sport in college basketball that leads them to be, potentially have transitional generational wealth, right? I think in girls basketball, still it's about a college scholarship, because the average pay in the WNBA is $75,000 a year, and you got to go overseas to make a lot of money. So it gets to be about a college scholarship. And for the most part, I'm with you, Dan. I mean, when parents want to get into it with refs in the stands, my comment is always like, hey, it's the best guy you can get for $25 a game. Right?
Yeah.
And he's doing it because he likes the sports. And in most cases, when the kids are younger, they're coaching the kids up while they're out there. You stand on the foul line, do this. I mean, because if in basketball, especially in kids basketball, 3rd and 4th grade, if you called every travel, if you called every little infraction, which parents are in the stands, he traveled. I'm like, well, because the kid just learned how to walk a year and a half ago, and now you're trying to put a ball in his hand, right? So, we're just trying to get through the 40 minutes and let the kids have some fun, right? And it's hard, right? Because it's you want your kids to be great at everything, and sometimes you realize that maybe science class is where they need to be great at.
Yeah. Well, and there's a meta concept to it. It's, I want my kids to be the best that they can be. And whatever they choose to be, right, that becomes specifically incarnated. At the same time, meta to that, what I really want them to do is be able to participate in this long series of iterations more than individual events. You know what I mean? And yelling at refs don't get you anywhere.
It doesn't, because you can't control it. And baseball probably is one of the worst, not just from that. I mean, it's already a game of failure. I mean, where every other sport, 30% and cutting it. And it's difficult. I mean, but I learned so much about myself and how to be as a professional through playing baseball. I mean, that's, while I loved playing football and basketball, baseball was just my passion. And
let's drag that thought back into tech, though. Right?
Yeah, sure.
If you look now, and obviously, because of my daughter's where she's at playing basketball and the potential that, if she wants to continue on, we want to facilitate her dreams. And so how do you get there, right? And if you start looking at the bigger picture, because at some point you're going to have to grow up and go out in life and participate in the way that we do now, right? And Bureau of Labor statistics say that right now in tech, right, in the tech industry, that 94% of women that are directors and above in tech companies, right, they've all participated in a high school team sport, not track, not individual activities, not athletics, right, a team sport. And of that, 54% of those girls and women participated in that sport in college, right? And a lot of that is because of Title IX. And if you look at the industry and the tech industry today, I mean, the prevalence of, I mean, Dan, I know how you hire. I know your thought process. You hire on talent, not on gender, right? And and because that's the only way you're ultimately going to be successful, right? And if you want to look at, in my opinion, if you want to look at successful people of either gender in business, it comes down to how do you, the glass ceiling in my mind of the old boys club used to revolve around team sports. Right? Because when I was in high school, girls were cheerleaders, right? They learned how to tell a guy he was doing a good job, right? And for all the competitive cheerleader moms out there, don't flip out on me. I'm talking about standing on the sidelines of a sporting event, jumping up and down, right? But in that regard, learning how to be part of it. When is it my turn to be a leader? When is it my turn to follow? Looking left and right. Does somebody need help? How can I pick people up? Those are things you can only learn in a team dynamic when there's when there's tough times, right? We could tell that during SEAL training, right? You could tell a guy that was a track guy or a cross country athlete as opposed to somebody that was played team sports, and you can continue to do that. I think and I've listened to her speak before, but the CIO of Vivint, the home security company, She was like a 4-time All-American in college, 2-time Olympian in field hockey. And she's a CIO at Vivint. As Dan, as you know, I mean, just the educational hurdles and everything else to get there, you don't end up there by accident.
No.
Right? And I think that's really, when it translates into tech in all its aspects, right? From sales to coding to being a product leader or the CEO of a company. It all starts with your ability to make those around you better and to be able to take constructive criticism. And I think you learn that inside the white lines of whatever sport you play.
Well, I think that's true. I mean, especially when you're looking at the team sports, you start building very early on a compassion even for the people that are next to you, because you know that at certain times your individual is going to fail and you need the other people around you to pick you up, and you know that the other people are going to fail and you need to pick them up. And that team environment allows you to build the tools early on that will make you successful in the business world. I'm not saying that there's not others that can't figure it out without a team sport, but what I have found is that those that they built it from a very early age, and they're better at it than those that weren't.
A team sport is a microcosm for the world in a lot of ways. I mean, and it directly mirrors our tribal roots, living in small groups that had to operate efficiently as a group in order just to basically survive, right? Whether it was food gathering, hunting, warfare, whatever, right? I mean, that we're still to this day very much wired to those primitives. What I find interesting is there's not more focus on that. I competed in sports. My favorite sports actually were individual sports. I just did better at it. But what it makes me think of is I think we're all old enough to have taken those little selection tests like in junior high or high school that you answered a bunch of questions in a survey and it told you what your prospective profession should be, right?
Right.
So one thing about that just because I think I slightly disagree with you, because I know you're talking about wrestling, I believe.
Well, wrestling, powerlifting, yeah.
Right. Well, so with wrestling, while it's individual competition, you aren't learning all those things without the rest of your team, right? It's the practice. So while individual competition, you all each had to work together to learn how to do all of the different moves and be successful.
Well, wrestling, folk wrestling, just so we're clear, I did American folk wrestling, not freestyle or Greco-Roman, just because the techniques are different. And actually the scoring is very different. And this is why it's important, because American folk wrestling in elementary, junior high, and high schools very much like professional cycling. And this is how, is you have a team and you actually win or lose as a team, but how the team wins or loses is based on the individual performance of the athletes along the weight classes. So just like cycling, where you have a team and the team wins or loses, it's really the leader or co-leaders and their performance, and the team just helps drag them. So I agree, you're right. I mean, you can't compete as an individual against the whole team.
Right.
So you can't compete without a team, but you can treat it as an individual effort, because it is an individual effort. There's nobody, once you're out there competing, there's no help. There's nobody to help you. It's just you. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so for me, powerlifting was the same thing, because it works the same way. It's a team sport in the sense that you win or lose as a team, but when you're lifting that weight, it's you and there's no help. That's what I mean by an individual effort. As opposed to, I played football and I absolutely detested it. And to be honest, to be fair, and I wish, and this is why I was going to connect it to those little survey questions, right? I wish I could have had some help cluing me into the fact that it's my personality. I just don't like those kinds of efforts. Not that I didn't like the mechanics of football as a sport, but video games are the same way, man. I don't like playing team-based video games because I don't like my performance hinging on other people's performance. I'm much happier and much more content as a person, and technology has now helped me figure this out. I'm much more content and happy as a person when it's my effort measured against my effort, if that makes sense.
Sure. I mean, it's a big reason why I prefer nowadays, golf, martial arts. I can be as good as I want, and I don't have to rely on someone else's efforts, to win. But that's now. I don't know that I would have ever changed anything. I might have kept playing football. That would have probably been an easier way to gain a scholarship, but rather than baseball. I mean, it's just football's more money. So I could have probably had more opportunities if I had put the same effort into football. Or then again, maybe I wouldn't be able to walk right now either.
Well, yeah, I mean,
I've
dude,
already had 2 surgeries just from playing baseball,
I,
and only on one knee. I might have had 6 on each.
it's funny you start getting into your 35, 40, 45, and I mean, my shoulder's wrecked from football. But nonetheless, my point is that had a, let's say, elder figure in the community of whatever community I was in noticed how I was behaving when I played these sports, it would have been just like TK, you were talking about buds training and knowing what sports people did. Somebody easily could have said, hey, look, man, we see what you're doing. Maybe this is the way you ought to go. And that would have been a beautiful thing. I mean, how much more, and I'm not criticizing the experience. I'm just wondering now in hindsight, how much more enabled would I have been earlier in my pathway? You know what I mean?
But I think, a lot of public schools now, they're starting to get rid of PE class for kids, right? And, I think a lot of kids were scouted, certainly when I went to high school, like they start looking at, hey, what are you doing? You'll get a PE teacher come up and say, hey, why don't you go try out for this sport? Because in PE class, you try every sport. And I think it's another example. It's like, hey, you're picking and choosing what's important. And sometimes I think just the raw get into class and go, do academics, especially at the younger ages, you're missing a big piece of that.
Yeah. Well, not to mention, I would almost say it's criminal to get rid of PE because let's not forget, a lot of the behavioral problems kids have is because they're not getting enough activity.
No, I totally agree. And more importantly, a lot of times with technology now, with put an iPad in your kid's hand, get the kid in video. It used to be TV, but when I was a kid, it was 3 channels, and most of the time it was crap you didn't want to watch as a child on there anyway. And now you can, with streaming and everything like that, you can be very targeted in what you want to watch and find something to keep you interested in. NFL 60 and stuff like. What's that, Dan?
When everything's in black and white, it's not that interesting.
It was actually it was in black and white for a long time.
Dude, we were watching. We showed my daughter's name's Lily. We showed Lily Gremlins yesterday. Yeah. First of all, how different were the 80s? Holy shit! Yeah. Not bad or good, just different, right? And so we're watching this, and in Gremlins, the kid that's raising Gizmo is watching a movie that's in black and white, and my daughter's 4.5, and she turns to me and she's like, "Daddy, that looks really boring."
Yeah.
Like, well, hey, listen, man, I grew up on the Rifleman and Platoon. You know what I mean?
Right. It was Saturday morning, 6 to 9. You had Looney Tunes, and then you're let's go outside and play because the rest of the day wasn't for you.
That's right.
And then the national anthem at midnight or 1 o'clock to turn it off, and getting up early to watch the test pattern for 10 minutes until they came back on at 6 in the morning.
That's right. Yeah, man. Well, and I think it's easy. I had this conversation this week with somebody. I was at a group event, and I was sitting around with some people, and we were talking about technology and its use. And I think it's very easy to fall into the mindset, especially in our generations, having not grown up with technology the way our kids are now, that technology is the root of evil, so to speak, for society. And maybe to some degree, some forms of technology are. But man, it's enormously powerful if you use it correctly. And so I go back to this idea of, well, I don't necessarily want to teach people how to use technology. I want to try and inform people when technology can help them be better human beings. And maybe when there's something else you ought to do and not use technology.
Well, that goes back to what you and I were talking about last week. Who gets to be the algorithm police?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, yeah. Of course you will. You'll take that Michigan hat off and get a hat with a big badge and a T-shirt that says "Algorithm Police."
Yeah. Oh shit, that's classic.
Go blue. They teach us all these kind of things at Michigan. Too bad Ken's not on.
You can be the algorithm police. I'll be the varmint police.
Yeah, you're gonna have to, because you're not gonna have any vegetables.
Listen, man. So talk about technology, use of technology. I know, TK, I think you got to go in a few minutes, right?
No, I'm good.
Oh, okay. So the part of the problem with these groundhogs yoinking the peppers is, ever since I've known her, and I think for a long time, Marsha, Mrs. Pittman, has made her own salsa. And so lately she's been toying with the idea that we're going to have such a huge yield if all the plants don't get yoinked that she might sell it, make it, sell it, distribute it, give it away, whatever, right? Because why not? I don't eat it because she makes it way too hot for me. Even when she makes me mild stuff, it's too hot, so I just don't touch it. Anyway, and so like it's particularly problematic because they're eating the peppers that she needs to create this salsa that she wants. So it goes back to how do you use technology? Well, there's no real technology that doesn't already exist outside of computation that can be used to deal with this. But I used technology to figure out to help me track the type of animal it was so that I can build an appropriate defense. You know what I mean? Because it ain't the deer, come to find out. It's these groundhogs.
You're gonna be like Carl Spagler in Caddyshack before it's all said and done.
Bonnie on Twitter sent me that, the little gopher curse.
Did you really? Yeah, because the only good varmint's a dead varmint.
Yeah, that's right. Well, and when I was making that tweet, I was thinking in the back of my head, dude, this is gonna turn into Caddyshack.
The minute you told me that the other day, that was the first thing I thought of.
I think I'm betting on the groundhog here.
Hey, man, listen.
Groundhog won in Caddyshack, too.
It's usually a mistake to not bet on me. Oh, man. But yeah, man, sometimes the simplest solution is the best, really, right? And so the deer fence seemed to have worked. I haven't seen them back, but that could honestly be just because they're migrating somewhere else. You know what I mean?
Right.
This is going to be a different effort because this is now like a full mesh netting fence. And, you got to hope they don't get under it. They ain't going to get over it. They're not real good climbers. But
you're going to have a little groundhog guillotine for them and everything like that.
Well, I got this giant English Mastiff for a dog. And for a little bit, I thought about deploying her to the garden. And I think this dog's so old, she just sleeps, man. She ain't doing anything.
Very careful about killing all these groundhogs. PETA's going to be, putting out a boycott for the show.
Well, hey, that would actually be good because an anti-sponsor is better than no sponsor.
Yeah.
Oh man.
PETA headquarters is in Norfolk, Virginia, right?
I did not know that.
Yeah, it's right in the water, right on the thing, and they have better security than most military installations, and they probably need it because people want to raise pitchforks and signs and everything against them, But yeah, it's lunacy down there with those folks sometimes.
Yeah, well, it's zealotry of the highest order.
Right. Sometimes. I was going to say I'd send my Jack Russell down there, but we have a half Jack Russell, half Dachshund. He's old and he's lazy. But my previous Jack Russells would have been all over it. We've never been able to get them back in the house after they taste blood, but that's just a Jack Russell behavior.
Yeah. Well, we got this new puppy, and I don't know, man. I got to train this dog.
What dog did you get?
A beagle.
Beagle, all right.
Yeah. I think she's going on 4 months. So time to start training. In fact, I'm going to take her for a walk after we're done. And when I'm done with that walk, then I'm going to go build this varmint fence. I got to tell you, though, man, you should
just put a no varmint sign up there, allowed, permitted. I'm sure they'll respect it.
Well, I didn't tell you this. I really enjoy weeding. And that's what I was going to say is I don't like gardening in the sense of like, I think I'm a farmer. I'm not, man. I could probably do way better if I actually studied some of the agricultural science of this, right? But it's just not my thing. I just want to be competent enough to grow enough food that I don't have to go to the grocery store and buy produce anymore. That's really all I want, which is achievable. But man, I really like just getting out and being part of the earth and doing things. It's very meditative, and so something that's really started to bother me because of the OCD that's driven by tech and all this stuff, man, is I cannot stand weeds, even in parts of the garden where we know we're not going to sow. I cannot stand weeds, dude. They got to go. Like we tilled this field. I don't want it overgrown again because in the future we may need it for something. So I need to get it. And so, man, I've been taking these weeds and like spreading them around with the idea that my scents on them, I pick them up and the plant's decaying. Maybe it'll help repel some of these pests. It's kind of like the equivalent of killing the animal and putting its head on a stake so you warn all the other animals.
Speaking of our new anti-sponsor.
Yeah. I'll tell you what's great though, man. You know, this is something that we would have never been able to do in California because the soil is so poor. You have to build raised beds in California, at least in Southern California. But man, you know, I take my daughter over there and now she knows how to handle earthworms and what they are and what they do. And she thinks it's funny but gross that they eat and poop dirt. You know what I mean? And she gets to play with all these bugs and stuff. She loves it, man.
I bet. I bet. So, I'm glad I'm not having to deal with any varmint. It's so much easier just for me to go to the grocery store and buy it.
Yeah, well, it is easier. I'm not going to begrudge you that. I mean, this is actually some hard work, but
yeah.
You know, man, what we've done because of the size of what we're doing, well, the vertical grow system is working fantastically, man. I mean, we put some new plants down in the very bottom. I'll take pictures today if I can get them in before it rains. And man, they sprouted overnight. I mean, this stuff seriously is effective. The soil substrate and the solution we put in the water.
And you don't have any issues with the with deer or your varmin getting into the vertical growing ones?
No, well, the ground-based varmints like groundhogs can't because it's too high. Deer could probably get to the first 2 buckets, but I've also put the fence around this too. So
right.
You don't have to worry about giraffes, so we're good.
Yeah, right. We don't have those here.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, that's right. The other thing we have a lot of are wild turkeys around here, man. Foxes. I've seen several silver and red foxes. Whatever, man. I don't know. It's an evolving educational experience, the way I look at it.
Oh yeah, you're going to learn quite a bit. So see now, if you gone into the chicken farming, which still might wind up happening, I think Mrs. Pittman's going to change her mind. She's going to want all those fresh eggs. Then you're going to have foxes in the hen house.
No chickens, man. Not unless we buy, in which we've talked about, unless we buy a farm property. Then I'll do it. But no chickens here, dude.
It's gonna happen. Maybe not there.
Hey, dude, I'm serious. I'll buy another farm.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have a problem with that. A little what here they call a mini farm.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
You're not buying hundreds of acres.
I would do somewhere between 60 and 100.
Wow.
Land.
I wouldn't farm all of it. Some of it I would keep. Just wild, and for no other reason than fuck it. I like walking through the woods, dude. I really enjoy it, man. You know. Yeah. And so if I can do it and it's my own property, then I don't have to worry about it. But you can. It's a beautiful thing. You can still do that here, man. You can buy hundreds of acres. It's not a problem. Some is more expensive than others, but
I can imagine. I'm not buying hundreds of acres in New York.
No. You'll be buying hundreds of feet.
Be buying hundreds of feet. That's about it. Oh. Well, I think that's about it.
Yeah.
It's a slow day here at This Life in Tech.
Yeah, a little bit slow today. A little bit slow. Got to get all the stuff ready to go for the week, and I've got a paper I got to finish writing. 2 miles down. Got my grade on supply chain. Now it's got to wait for the cost accounting one. The strategy one. This is what the paper's about. That one was easy.
So do you have a summer semester?
Yeah, it's nonstop. So it's just like what we did in the doctor program. It's a consecutive 22 months.
Mm-hmm.
There's like maybe a 2-week break after this next semester, which is between. So this one will end July, and so there's a 2-week gap before the August stuff stands up, and then there's you're basically also there's the 2-week gap in December. So.
That's good though. As a student, I'd rather just keep going. I think momentum is really, really important.
Yeah, it's 22 months, but I've got only 12 months left. So,
right.
It's in the once I get into. So from everything I've been told, like the semesters that I've just finished, these first 2 are the most difficult, and then you get into application. You know, because we have to
Sure.
go and evaluate a company and all this kind of jazz. That's like the most difficult part.
How much longer are you in Kosovo, TK?
I will be here until Thursday. So yeah, it's been a great couple weeks. It's always good to be here. They're doing amazing things, and it's great to be here and be part of the process.
Hell yeah, man! That conference room with everybody in it looks sweet. The
Yeah,
photo you put up.
the whole office is like, it's very industrial. I'm going to start taking a bunch of pictures and getting them up on social this week, because they've done that. This Cyber Academy class is in full swing right now. We've got some clients that we're building stuff for and doing things. And so it's an exciting time to build a young company, and I'm glad that, that we can be part of it.
What are you, 6 hours ahead?
Yeah, I'm +6.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. When I get off with you guys, I'm going to go watch girls basketball over here.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah. So it'll be a good day.
Well, I'm gonna go walk this little puppy and start to train it, and then I'm gonna go build my varmint fence, and then we're going for a hike in the woods.
That'll be a blast.
Good luck hunting rabbit.
Did you say good luck hunting rabbits?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh boy.
Thanks. Like, in 2 weeks, it's going to be rabbits. Now it's the rabbits.
They're around, man, but you know that's why I went with the netting I did. I'll take pictures and put them up. This netting will stop pretty much everything. It's strong enough and it's built for it. So we'll see. It really comes down to, can I put it up correctly? Yeah. Which is, you know, maybe I will, maybe I won't, but that's a reducible variable.
Yep. Awesome.
We're about 3 weeks away from you being Elmer Fudd out there with an orange hat and a shotgun.
Oh man.
I'm not sure it's going to be 3 weeks.
It's crossed my mind, but
freeze, varmint.
Well, you know, yeah, I'll give you updates later.
All right.
All right, my friends.
All right, everybody.
All right, have a great week, everybody.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.